Well, I'm shadow banned most places now, but you
Yeah,
try
whoa.
me on Twitter at Jeffries. Uh, Substack is the place where I'm allowed to go. We support Substack because it's the last free speech platform we have. They're trying to end free speech, and that's the big one that they have. So that's where I'm the only place I'm being allowed to grow. Everywhere else, they hold down your audience, and that's the idea behind all of it. They don't want these audiences to grow, unless maybe they'll co-opt a few people and they'll promote them as the alternative. But it's you can do searches for me and find me everywhere. I think last time I was here, we were discussing Masking the Truth, my COVID book, and that was that's I call it the most shadow banned book in the world because they just, Barnes and Noble just disappeared the book. It was there and then it's gone. There's no explanation. Twitter got rid. I mean, Amazon got rid of the Kindle version. No explanation. Apple Books wanted to charge $999 for it. I mean,
What?
yeah. They did so many games with that book. It's ridiculous. So it's amazing anybody got it. So my hats off to those who did.
Now, do you have a website?
Yeah, Donald Jeffries Media, run by
Donald
the
Jeffries
great Sonny
Media.
Gardner, your friend of mine.
All the links below. Down, I couldn't agree with you more. I too am shadow banned very much. And you put that, you go, oh dude, I'm getting shadow banned. You hear all these ridiculous comments from trolls. Oh,
Yeah,
you're not shadow banned, you're just not good. Okay, I'll accept that.
yeah,
Except for when
yeah,
people take my content, put it on their channel and it explodes. I see it happen all the time. My podcast has its own Instagram that is doing better than my own personal Instagram. This romanticizing of Mark Zuckerberg is annoying.
yeah,
I love the UFC. I love watching MMA. It's one of my favorite sports to watch. The deep throating of Mark Zuckerberg in the MMA circles is annoying. Especially now that it came out that he basically put his finger on the election, which who all of it's fake anyways. It's fake and gay. Um, but it's like I feel for you, man. Like I cannot advertise my stand up dates. I can't advertise them. They won't let me do
yeah,
it.
yeah,
They won't
yeah.
let me go anywhere. They won't let me. Dude, they got this thing on Facebook. One of my accounts allow me to ads, and then it's like, okay, I want to do this much ad for this long. It goes, you have no money in your account. I go, yeah, because you're supposed to charge my credit card. That's how it goes. Oh, you have no money in your account. Can't help you. And there's no one to talk to at all.
Yeah, that's what they do. They stop you from promoting. So if it's my birthday and I post a stupid picture of me, just standing in front of a birthday cake or something, or at a concert, or so, then I can get hundreds of responses. But if I certainly can't comment on anything politically and any kind of promotion. Like if I try to promote a book, an appearance, a podcast or something, yeah, they shut that down. Nobody sees it, and it's a shame because we know there's not much competition out there. If you look at a lot of these people that are successful, I'm not impressed by them. But if you don't have a level playing field, it's like they're you're going up against somebody, in a sporting event, and the referees are just going to blow the whistle on you every time you score or something. I mean, that's what they're doing to us. It's not a level playing field.
Yeah, I see that in stand up comedy too. Like, there's friends of mine who I love, and they're great comics, but the love they're allowed to the way they're allowed to promote and grow their brand versus what I can do it's just really demoralizing, to be honest with you. It's
Yeah,
really sad. And if there was, like, this is the worst part. If there was a rule for everybody, I would respect it. But there's not. Uh so there was a group of guys, three guys on a couch, and they didn't like one of my jokes. They broke it down, and their content is so mid and milk toast and hot garbage. Okay, but they get hundreds of thousands of views because they
yeah,
lean to the progressive left, and they're allowed to thrive. Whereas me, I get, and it's so funny because you bring up like the AI knows if something's political or just a cat video or something like that, right? So when I put out one of any of my clips from any of my stand up, my comedy, or excuse me, my podcast, I mean, it gets no traction, like
Yeah.
none.
Yeah.
But
And
if
what's
somebody
funny is
takes my account, takes my video, puts it on their account, it blows up.
And what's funny is they still try to censor like the bad words, all the trigger words, and for some reason it still gets Sam. Like you'll censor the F-bomb, you'll censor the world of Israel, and it still somehow ends up getting shadow banned one way or another. And then, like, yes, he says, I'll post it on the TinFoilHat account, and that shit'll get way more views than his actual
No, but
account.
even if you compare, let's say, a female comic to a male comic, what they allow female comics to say in their clips is way beyond what they'll allow, especially a white guy, to say in their clip.
Oh,
It's
well,
like-
like the other day, Martin Moreno posted a little thirst trap, like with his t-shirt off, trying to be like kind of provocative on Instagram. Got shadow banned, got kicked off when Instagram's full of girls twerking all day in bikinis. That makes no sense why he's considered like a sex object when it was just a dude kind of being, I guess, what's sexy. I didn't like it, but it's like, why is he getting kicked off of Instagram for that?
Yeah, they don't have any, and that's what happens when you get in the censorship games. You know, there's no rhyme or reason to it. There's inconsistencies everywhere. That's why, you know, obviously there should be no censorship. You know, it's problem solved. You know, I'm a free speech purist. There aren't many of us left. You know, and I told the story. You know, people in my book Crimes and Cover-ups in American Politics, 1776, 1963. I learned, you know, I have our friend Chris Graves does a lot of research for me, and Peter Seacosh. They really helped a lot on this book, but they started helping me back then. And I learned when I was researching that, just looking up Woodrow Wilson's locking up World War I protesters in prison. You know, they naturally objected to that, petitioned the Supreme Court. Oliver Wendell Holmes, great liberal judge, eugenicist, you know, warmonger, like most of those guys were. Wilson can do this. And he used this as rationale. He's the one who invented the you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. And that, you know, this was in World War I. Nobody heard of that before. And so that's where that asterisk on the First Amendment came from. And the American people, they just collectively shrugged their shoulders. They didn't think, wait a minute, you know, how is objecting to protesting a war? How is that yelling fire in a crowded theater? What are you using a ridiculous analogy like that for? That's where that comes from. The average American has no concept of that. And once you allowed that asterisk to people on the First Amendment, then it paved the way later for hate speech and misinformation and disinformation.
Yes.
All the stuff we have now. And we allow it. Instead, people need to be purists. And don't say I'm not racist or I'm not. You have a right to be racist. It's not illegal. Maybe stupid, but it's not illegal. You have a right to be misogynist. You have a right to be bigoted. You have a right to be wrong. You can be misinformed. Hell, the vast majority of the American people is misinformed about everything. So if you're going to legalize that, you're going to have to throw everyone in prison. But nobody looks at it that like. Instead, they say, well, no, that's not hate speech. Hate speech is thought crime. That's what that means. It's an Orwellian term designed because we're all thought criminals. That's what it is. You know, we're projecting thoughts that we're not supposed to do.
So the left is getting all upset because they want to ban books in children's libraries, okay? In children's libraries, pornography books.
Genderqueer, yeah.
Which when I was growing up, there was kind of this understanding that you don't sexualize children. It's just wrong. You let them grow. And, you know, you have all these people now, they go to therapy for childhood trauma, but because they're on the progressive left, you know, and the progressive left's whole thing is smile while you do evil shit, right? They have no problem with inflicting trauma on the next generation. Because again, the theory of hate is more devastating than real life on the ground, you know, on the streets problems like crime, you know, sexualization of children, all these things that have giant ramifications in their society. So they're losing their mind about banning sexualized books in schools, in libraries for children, not adults, for children. Okay. But yet they have no problem with the censorship of people who have opposite political views of them.
That's right.
They have none, which is,
No.
again, in a way, a thought book burning. You're burning a thought of you're not allowing it to be heard. And it's the exact same thing and it just gets to this thing where you just when you allow something to be done against something that you don't like, simply because you don't like it, it will be used against you eventually.
That's right. You can't give them any leeway. You can't give them an inch, because what happens, this is a slippery slope. And once the so-called right, the opposition, and it's, I started out on the left. When I was a teenager in the mid 1970s, I was working for Mark Lane, the most prominent critic of the Warren Report, for the Citizens Committee of Inquiry as a volunteer. I was, emulating him. I was being a civil libertarian. I was the ACLU card-carrying member, because the ACLU back then cared about civil liberties. I was on as far on the left as you could get. The left today is a joke. The left today, back then, they used to want to extend rights to people who didn't have them. They wanted, and they're the ones that were against censorship. Now, back then, you had George Carlin and people like that it was about, saying dirty words or sexual stuff, and they were, and I was right there with them. Yeah, we can't censor this. But now you have the left is for all, and back then it was a Catholic League of Decency and so forth, was going against, that was promoting censorship. Now you have the exact thing is flipped completely 180 degrees, where you have the left. Their entire game now is to get people in trouble for saying something. They want to cancel you. They want to get you fired. Oh, what did you say? Did you hear what they said? Did you hear what Sam Tripoli said on his? Their entire thing is to try to catch you and say, hey, hey, what did you hear what he said? What is he? That's racist. That's misogynist. That's anti-Semitic. Whatever. And that's their entire. And they were so different back then. They were the ones. That's why I was attracted to them. And the right is, they were the ones that, kind of the authoritarians. Now the left is so authoritarian. So you have the New York Times and things like that running articles now about the concept that the Bill of Rights goes too far. You have a recent poll that says 53% of Americans think the First Amendment goes too far. So we're outnumbered. Their propaganda has succeeded. The majority of Americans don't like free speech. They don't want it.
Yeah, and it's so crazy to me. It's so crazy to me, because they just, again, it's like this war being waged by rich kids on middle America. And it's just a bunch of rich kids playing commies who have everything in the world, and they just want to destroy their parents' America. That's what they want, which is, we're in this weird thing, Donald, where we're kind of have this like weird hybrid between the Chinese Cultural Revolution and the Russian Bolshevik Revolution, where we have the Cultural Revolution of China, where all the rich kids, all the children went after the adults and told them they had bad think. And then you have these foreign invaders. Then then in the Bolsheviks, they all pretended that they were Russians. Here, they're not even pretending, but they're all just coming in through these porous borders, and we're seeing chaos go. Now, this weird thing that's happening in these apartment complexes, we're hearing different stories now, boots on the ground. It's not what we're being told about, the gangs. It's about a shitty ass landlord that wouldn't clean up his stuff. But this fits into this kind of like sorcery of manipulation to manifest a kind of immigration war that they kind of want going on, because at the end of the day, they really do want martial law. What's your thoughts on all that?
Some type of war. Did you see that the Hells Angels were on the way there?
Yeah, that's not true at all.
Yeah, no, it's not. It was a lot of more misinformation. The picture was like from a long time ago.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because how far have we sunk when we got to depend on the Hells Angels? And that,
the Rolling Stones tried to do that. That blew up.
That didn't work that time. But I mean, this is the immigration problem. Is that, again, it goes back at least to the 80s, and in American Memory Hall, I talk a little bit more about Reagan's legacy, because the right loves Reagan. And I'm trying to show them again. There's no reason to love this guy. He had a chance to do something about the problem in 1986. And instead, he got, they say, oh, the Democrats fooled him. The Democrats are always fooling these stupid party people. They fooled Trump. I don't know why, it's why they call it the stupid party, but they fooled Reagan somehow. And so he signed a terrible law that granted amnesty to millions. And I remember I was working with a lot of immigrants back then as a blue collar worker. And they were all saying how stupid it was. They're all going to be brave. They're going to bring all their family members in. And they did. And nobody blames for that. And at that time, you could have done something about it. And then you had what I just wrote Prop 187, which was passed in a very different California in 1994, overwhelmingly passed, which would have done the most logical thing. You don't need a deportation staff. You just say, hey, if you're not here legally, you can't get government benefits. That's for people that are here legally. That's a very simple thing to do. We can't seem to do it, but the citizens want to do it. But what happens, and this goes into what I talk about in American Memorial, judicial review, all the way back to the beginning of the country, because nobody listened to Thomas Jefferson at the beginning, and they let the judiciary usurp the other two branches and allow them to interpret the Constitution, which they never intended. Jefferson said, no, this is not what we wanted. And I think I'm the first one since Jefferson to talk about this. But California, 1994, passes a very important proposition, would have solved the problem in their state at least. And the federal judge takes it and says, no, unconstitutional. So again, they overturn the will of the people. And they've done that on marijuana measures and things like that too. That's not what a constitutional republic or a democracy does, where you let some ridiculous unelected judge overturn the will of the people. But this is where we are. And so you come to the point where we are now, where you have a problem that I don't know that you can solve it at this time. I mean, it's the gates have been the flood, and so the thing where the migrants are overtaking the apartment buildings. I don't know. I've heard several stories about it, and you hear like law enforcement's not doing anything about it. I mean, that doesn't make any sense unless you want everything to collapse, and that seems to be what they want to happen. We'll let it go, just like we saw during Black Lives Matters and Antifa in 2020. Let everything burn. I mean, what? Wait, I mean, what kind of? That's why I have no argument with the anarchists anymore. I have a lot of anarchist supporters, and I used to argue with them a little bit, but I have no argument with them anymore. What authority is there worth respecting? There's nothing worth respecting at all anymore. So, as far as I'm concerned, anarchy would not be any worse than what we have.